Welcome back, fellow and future reef keepers, to Craft Aquatic. I'm Matt G. Being that the holidays are upon us, I'd like to present this video that I have been very much looking forward to showing you. We're going to do an extensive update on the Rubble Coral Farm, a truly unique, now 3-tank, full-on reef and frag route system in our basement. I'll be going over in detail how I implemented a third frag tank into the system, updates on what is new with the existing Rubble frag tank, the new fish I've added, details on how I feed every coral in the system, the new equipment, and of course plenty of colorful coral to show you throughout the video and right up to the end. Friends, thank you to all who have subscribed to Craft Aquatic this year. It really means a lot. If you're just discovering this channel or have been lurking for some time, there are already dozens of reef-related videos to binge on into the new year, and many more to come, so go ahead and subscribe. Here we go. The Rubble frag system originated with the parts from my previous apartment-sized reef setup, a 34-gallon Solana gutted and modified to be plumbed into a 15-gallon long, which was also plumbed with an overflow to drain down to a central sump. I put a link in the description to a detailed video on the original Rubble build. This tank is something I had been thinking about for a while. I was looking for a smaller cube, something about this size. This is a 30-gallon deep blue cube. I found it used locally. It was already plumbed with an overflow, pre-drilled, and in some rough shape. The stand needed a little bit of help, but I wanted to put it right here next to the existing frag system and just kind of get rid of that shelf and organize things a little bit better. So the plan was to get something that was the right size for that area and it gave me plenty of options as far as placing frags. Also getting tired of this TV stand for running tests, doing fragging, so I'm going to show you what I did about that in this video as well. The 34-gallon Solana and 15-gallon cube all plumbed together have worked so well for growing coral. It's kind of amazing how much I've grown and how healthy those frags have been. I originally was using these black boxes side by side, and in the original video I had hung them in a different way, but as you can see now I've added these heavier duty chains to keep them up. Here's the stand that I already mentioned is kind of in rough shape. You can see it's a little wobbly looking, not very even. The screws are not countersunk. The wood is loose, and really sort of some of the pieces are misplaced. Building a stand is a little intimidating if you haven't done it before, and I know a lot of first-time builders will sort of leave gaps like this, and because the stand does not feel substantial to them, they will add extra pieces of wood on the inside to reinforce it, to make it feel a little more solid. So there were a lot of issues with this build, but the wood they used was great. It's kiln-dried 2x4s, which is what I would choose to build a stand, and what I did use on the 120-gallon reef tank stand upstairs. So I like to find stuff like this because basically this stand was free with the tank, so I can use all that wood to rebuild the way that I see fit. The way I like to build my stands is using a pocket hole jig. It's a lot neater looking in the end, and the stand ends up being a lot stronger, which is an added benefit. When I was shopping around looking for a used cube and I saw that this came with a stand, I asked the original builder if he had used glue in each joint, which he should have done, but he said that he didn't, which I actually prefer because it was a lot easier to pull it apart. In my last video about building the saltwater mix station, I mentioned that I don't love plumbing, but I do enjoy carpentry, so this wasn't so bad. It felt good to be able to get rid of this bookshelf. It was supposed to be temporary, ended up being there for a couple years. I always line the back wall with plastic. It saved me on a bunch of occasions. Here's the rebuilt stand. It's a lot sturdier now, much less wood used in the rebuild process, which left room for the new shelf underneath and a new home for all of the displaced food, additives, and supplements. You see a lot of wood filler there filling in those old screw holes. Everything is drilled from the inside now, and the stand will be painted gray to match everything else. Here you see the already plumbed return line and that ball valve being switched on to allow the water to flow from the cycling lowboy into the shared sump. This is actual footage from the first time that I switched that return on, so I'm going back and forth, checking all my levels, making sure everything's good. And then here I'm switching on this manifold, which I'm going to put in the description because this thing is awesome. I wanted to build a manifold and it was going to be so many parts and so much cost, but that manifold is all one piece on Amazon. I'll put an affiliate link on there so you can, help me out and I can help you out. So basically I'm just slowly increasing that flow, watching everything, making sure my sump level doesn't rise too high, observing to see how everything's working together. I started with a minimum amount of flow coming back into that 30-gallon deep blue lowboy cube and just watching to see how everything flows back and through into the sump. It's always nerve-wracking when you first build your plumbing and you're testing it out for the first time. You're really going for seeing if there's any leaks, but this had already been cycling with salt water, so it would have been a little more difficult to deal with a leak. Fortunately, everything was good and I ended up with no leaks at all. This video is showing a very condensed version of the process of implementing this third tank into the Rack and Rubble Frag system. Overall, this took about 8 months, from finding the tank to rebuilding the stand to getting around to doing all the plumbing to cycling this tank right here for 4 months and getting to the point where I was comfortable enough to switch on that flow between the Rack and Rubble Frag system and this new addition. So far, it's been nothing but beneficial having this additional water volume as part of the Rack and Rubble Frag system. I got this giant rack that I can place frags onto, and I'm already filling it up, so we'll see where we go from here. Often it's the little details that make your life so much easier, and this shelf is one of those things. It's wedged between the two larger tanks. It has a metal shelf underneath to hold odds and ends and test kits, and it has made fragging and running tests so much easier. I run tests so much more often now. My son's hopped up there and done some art. He's right next to the tank so he can draw the coral. And I stick these 2 coral pointers right in holes in the shelf so when people come over, they can grab them easily and point right to the exact frag that they're looking to purchase. The little shelf doesn't hold everything, and I have so many odds and ends, measuring cups, razor blades, jugs, things to maintain this system and the upstairs tanks, so I found that hanging it above is an excellent solution. It seems forever ago now, but I have hanging behind the tank this 3-part series from Chris Kaz at Coral Creations. I purchased them at Frag Farmers Market, one of the only coral shows in 2020. I did a video about that show, and I'll put a link in the description. One of the things I love about the downstairs tank is I can experiment with different ideas. Here I'm trying to tumble some Chaeto in this, what I call the loft over the lowboy. The water from the central 10-gallon sump flows up into this 5-gallon sump sitting on top of the lowboy, out into the tank, circulates around, and then back down to the 10-gallon sump. I've been experimenting a little bit with growing a mangrove in the back. It seemed like a pretty good spot to put it since it's up high, and I can put a grow light way above the 2 tanks. They're not growing or affecting algae explosion in the other 2 systems too much, and it gives me a nice little backdrop of red light that contrasts nicely with the blue. Here you see the Viper Spectra that I'm using over the new addition. It's a light that's worked pretty well over the 120-gallon Reef upstairs, and I figured it would be worth a shot down here since it's grown entire colonies up there. It's a simple light. There are 2 banks of channels, 2 timers. It's either on or off. It does what it needs to do, and because I have so much room over this tank, I can lift it nice and high, and the optics that are not the best quality don't matter as much, since the added height assists with LED mixing and spread. The intent of the Rack and Rubble Frag system has always been versatility and the ability to grow all different variety of coral in one system. The center tank is high power, high flow for SPS mainly. The 15-gallon Rubble tank is low power, low flow for LPS and leathers, and the now 30-gallon shallow cube is a medium flow, middle power tank for a mixture of species and varieties. The system does not use any type of controller unless you count the Inkbird heater controllers. I simply use a series of AC adapters and switches that make it practical and easy to switch pumps and circulation on and off when I am working in one of the tanks. I did go ahead and add a second heater controller since I'd really be pushing it with just one. This is the ice cap gyre that was in the upstairs tank. I've always had issues with this pump, and at this point only one side works, which is perfect for this tank since I don't really need a ton of flow, just enough to agitate the surface. I went ahead and upgraded the flow in the 34-gallon Solana as well. I felt there wasn't enough surface agitation, so I added this Tunzi to the back right corner. I believe it's a 60-25, and it kicks up the surface a little bit. It really did actually help with the colors right away. If you watch the other video, you'll see that I've replaced that Maxi Jet with this Nero 5. I put a guard in the back just to keep those little mollies from getting sucked in. The 15-gallon Rubble tank still has those two little Corallias in it. They put out around 190 gallons per hour, and because they're so low flow, they get clogged probably every 2 weeks. I can pull them out really easily and just rub them off with a cloth. When I bought the low boy, I got a bunch of free stuff with it. Protein skimmer, that 5-gallon sump you saw, and this magnet. And I love it. It actually works so well in this tank, I bought 2 more for the other tanks. I'll put a link in the description. Here we have the last 2 of the 5 saltwater mollies. These guys are fat and healthy and eating out of my hand. The other 3 sort of wasted away. I'm not sure if they were sick or there was something else wrong with them, but I think these 2 are going to last for a while. I have 4 new fish in the new shallow cube. Actually, the yellow tank came over from the 34-gallon. There's an adorable little Aptasia eating filefish in the back. In the event we have an outbreak in the tank, one of those blue devil damsels I love so much, and a 6-line wrasse for picking off any parasites that make their way into the system. All of the fish have been getting along very well. For some reason the tang loves to swim into the backflow of the gyre. I find most varieties of large snails useful and interesting. This is a chestnut cowrie covered up with his skin, and here he is with his shiny shell showing. We also have some bumblebee snails, abalone, trochus, and limpets. The overall system is mature, but far from perfect. I do get little outbreaks of cyano in areas of low flow. Also, one of the issues I get with areas of low flow is tissue recession in some of the acropora. Here's a fox flame. I'm just going to pluck it off and put a new piece on. It may have been another issue as well, but I'm constantly looking through, managing, making sure everything is looking healthy, and swapping frags in and out. Maybe I'll cut a little piece off a frag if it's not looking good. I just fragged up that green slime here. You can see some of its slime floating all over the place, and here are a bunch of SPS frags settling in after a mass fragging event. Here you're seeing the coral in the 34-gallon Solana. This tank gets full spectrum all day long, about 10 hours worth. And here I just switched the blue on so you could see some of the nice tenuous that's in here. Got some orange passion, home wrecker, and some Walt Disney's in the bottom. Since this is a frag system, I can really take my time experimenting with how placement, par, and flow affects each type and variety of coral. It's important for me to fully understand the needs of especially the more delicate SPS species, so I can share my knowledge with you and suggest optimum care requirements for each coral I trade and sell. Taking care of 2 reef systems can be a lot to manage. That's why I stick to a strict schedule. On Thursdays, I treat the tank with some coral snow, and I'll go over what that is exactly in a few videos from now. At this point in the video, I'd like to show you my 2-step process for feeding all of the coral in the Rack and Rubble frag system. Once a week, I add 1 teaspoon of reefroids, reef chili, and amino acids to 2 cups of water. I grab a couple basters, and I feed every single coral in the tank. The first step is to turn off all the circulation, all the flow in the tank, and spot feed each single coral. This is sort of a mixture of spot feeding and broadcast feeding, since some of it does float through the entire water column. Many of the coral react right away to the feeding. Some of the brighter LPS coral and SPS coral, like the Hawkins echinata, the colors just immediately become richer, and it's apparent that they're really appreciating, especially I think the amino acids that are mixed into this. But the Goniopora, this is absolutely necessary if you want to get little small frags, little micro frags to grow up into bigger colonies. I like to make sure the Goniopora, Elvipora, and Blastos get fed at least twice a week. I've yet to get to the point where I can actually share these with anyone because they are such slow growers, but I'd like to see that happen in the coming year. When it comes to maintaining the Rack and Rubble frag system, there are plenty of tasks that are pretty grueling, but one of my favorite is actually feeding the coral. Once I have the roids and everything, the minnows floating around in the tank, some of the coral with larger mouths and feeding tentacles will start to open up so that I can actually feed them some pellets. I use suitable marine pellets with natural ingredients, preferably of a smaller size. I can feed things like these acan lords, which I wish I had more of. Again, these are slow growers. We have a bunch of Merletti over here. There's some Duncans, anything that has large tentacles with an open mouth, and even some of the smaller LPS species. Here's some more Blastomussa in the Rubble system. These guys really react well to the pellet feedings. This is a new piece that I just got. And also you can go for some of the higher end mushrooms. They will also do pretty well and grow a little bit faster if they're getting regular feedings. If you have a lot of fish, shrimp, wrasses, things in your system that will go around picking up anything that you drop onto a coral, like these LPS with really small mouths, this type of feeding might not work. But if your fish are well fed and they don't bug the coral, this will actually help some of your higher end LPS grow much faster. Once I'm done dosing the minnows, feeding the roids, dropping as many pellets and as many mouths as will accept them, I let the system sit for about a half hour undisturbed, set an alarm so I remember to come back down and turn everything back on. So that's about it for this Rack and Rubble Frag system update. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the system, leave them in the comments below. I try to answer everything as quickly as possible. That's the other aspect of making these videos, is to actually communicate and have a dialogue with you. So thank you all who come around, check out the videos, support this channel. It's made it an amazing adventure for the last 2 years now. I think I'm up to a video a month for that 2 years, and I keep on making them because you keep on coming back to watch. So please do hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I got all kinds of good stuff coming for you in 2021. Happy New Year, happy holidays, and thanks for checking it out.